All right, back on the show, the Friday Baseball Show. Stan the Fan, Griffin Bass, special guest Byron Warnken with us. And joining us now by telephone is Dan Duquette, former general manager of the Baltimore Orioles. Dan, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Stan. How are you?
Good. What's wrong with the phone service down there in Wilmington, North Carolina?
We just had a thunderstorm, and we don't have internet access right now.
That's all right.
So,
We're, we'll
so
we'll get the
we we
same
we, we,
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
we do have it. We do have it here in North Carolina, but not right now.
All right. Hey, it's great to talk to you. And before we dig into the Orioles, I wanted to ask you because I'm assuming you know John Mozeliak pretty well, don't you?
Yeah, I know John. He was with the Cardinals for several years,
Yeah. I'm just wondering,
and
did it catch you by surprise that he came back in, and especially as such a tough situation as the Angels?
yeah, I don't I don't know what John his personal goals are, but
Yeah.
I do know the Angels are a really top-notch franchise. I mean, they can be a top-notch
Yeah.
franchise, you know. They're a lot like the Orioles were when I joined them.
Yep.
They haven't been in the playoffs in a long time.
I think we lost him.
No, I think you said.
You still there, Dan? No, we lost him. I heard it click off. All right. So the phone service there in Wilmington, North Carolina, not so good either.
I think he's back.
You back, Dan?
Yeah,
All right,
yeah,
we
I'm
lost
back.
you
Can
for a
you hear me?
second. Yeah. But I agree with
Yeah.
you. I agree the Angels situation, I refer to it as a tough situation because of where they currently are talent wise. But do you think he can succeed there?
Well, I don't know. There's the franchise is a lot like the Orioles when I joined them. They haven't been to the playoffs in a long time, and they haven't had a competitive team, I don't think, in 11 years, right?
Yeah,
So, I mean, if somebody goes in there and they get the team organized, it's a great market.
no question about it. No question about it.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah,
a
sure,
question?
Dan. I'm kind of curious how Orioles were in a very unique situation, I guess, at the trade deadline. With the American League being so weak, so they were only like 2.5 games out of a playoff spot, but also still, you can't really blame them, I guess, for kind of selling the way that they ended up doing. So I'm curious how like you would determine what did you determine whether you were gonna like sell at the deadline, if you were going to go all in and buy or stand pat, that kind of thing. So what do you make of what the Orioles did?
Well, my theory is that if you're in the race and you're in the pennant race, you owe it to the team and the fans to do what you can to get your team organized.
Looks
All right,
like we're
yeah. I'm gonna try to call you on the phone. On the phone, Dan. I'll call you in like 2 seconds. All right. How about that?
Okay.
Yep.
All
all
right.
right.
Thanks.
We're having trouble communicating with Dan right now. But that's sort of the big question is did they do the right thing at this point in time, Byron?
I also don't think it's as consequential as folks think. I mean, we want to believe that this is massively consequential. I'm not really sure that it is. There's a lot of talent there. I think that we are a competitive team. I think we will remain a competitive team. I think this is just about direction.
I'm
And
good. Dan, you hear me okay?
and when we signed
Okay.
Basayo, it's like what did people think? We were going to have two massive long-term deals to catchers. I
right,
mean, it just
right.
and I like to, we got a great deal with
With
Samuel,
Basayo,
but
yeah.
but for Rutschman to think that he was going to get signed behind
Yeah, I don't
Basayo,
think
I don't think that was going to happen.
I think he
that was
knew,
never going to
I
happen.
think he knew that as well.
Right.
We're talking with Dan Duquette, and we've had some phone issues. Hopefully, they're behind us. Uh, Byron, you got a question for Dan?
Hey, Dan, Byron Warnkin here. I had a question about it. Did you come in? Did you take over for Andy McPhail? Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, I came in at the end of 2011,
Okay.
December of 2011, and I think Andy had left a little bit earlier that year.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the Orioles were looking for somebody to replace Andy.
Sure. I remember I saw Andy speak about this one time, that his theory he wanted to be was buy the bats and grow the arms. And are you seeing, from your perspective right now, maybe a shift lately, and especially with this deal for Adley, back towards that?
Well, I think you have to develop some pitchers on your own too to give yourself a foundation. And the teams that do that, they can be competitive year in and year out. We were able to develop some pitchers during my time there, and we developed quite a few pitchers during my time with the Red Sox, and a lot of those guys we ended up using for trade to get established major league pitchers. So I think you got to place some emphasis and have a player development operation where you draft pitchers and you develop some pitchers so that you can have some basis for pitching within your system, and then also have some pitchers that you can utilize in trade for whatever you need at the big league level.
Sure.
So I think you have to grow as many players as you can on the farm, pitchers and players.
But Dan, I'm looking at the Orioles, and I've followed them, as you know. I was on the radio for 20 plus years, way before you got to town, and I never recall seeing at least a dozen starting pitchers that I think are really viable candidates to contribute at the major league level.
Well, I think you always need numbers in the minor leagues, right? And you need numbers in the big leagues too, because there's so many injuries, with teams chasing velocity all the time.
Yeah.
And there's a certain cost to that. So I think the teams that focus on drafting pitchers, signing pitchers at the amateur level, and then developing them, that gives them a lot of collateral to build their team either through the farm system or through trade. So, I think it behooves all the teams to put a lot of resources into that.
Yeah, it seems at the trade deadline last year that Mike Elias, both at the trade deadline and last year's draft, where he drafted Joseph Zerwa and J.T. Quinn, and then at the deadline last year, he acquired Boston Bateman, Jerron Watts-Brown, and there was somebody else in there, that he shifted, and he's continued to do that. This year, they drafted about 9 pitchers in the draft, and then he continued to add pitchers, which is something I haven't seen out of Mike Elias in his 7 years here.
Yeah, I think that, the Orioles, when they're not contenders, it's because their starting pitching isn't as strong as it needs to be, right? And so the team, when they get off to a bad start, it's either because they had a starting pitching rotation where they had a bunch of injuries, or they didn't have the horses on the front of their rotation to stabilize their team. So that to me makes good sense to focus on the pitching. And I think the Orioles, when they came back to get back in the race this year, when they got their starting pitching stabilized, that's when their team started to move up in the standings. That's when they were able to put some streaks together.
No question about it. No question about it. Byron?
Dan, are you? What is your thoughts with your extensive background on what we're seeing with pitchers? I heard you say chasing velocity, but is the era of just constant injuries and multiple Tommy Johns, is that here to stay for forever, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know, but the having the good pitchers and developing players on your farm, that's a key thing. People say that when Mike Elias started, that he took over a train wreck, and that wasn't the case. We had an established minor league system, and we left some good players on the farm system available to help the team. And I think Mike acknowledged that when they made the playoffs after a short rebuild.
Yeah.
That he got a contribution from the Oriole farm system. You know, as far as the injury goes, you know, that's an area that you got to watch very carefully. You know, all the medical people, all the instructional people, the manager, the management, they got and the pitchers, they got to all collaborate on that to stay healthy, right? There's certain things you got to do to stay healthy. Remember, we had Dave Wallace as a pitching coach there?
Sure do.
And when we had Dave Wallace as a pitching coach, we happened to have a great year because Dave Wallace focused on the health of his pitchers. That was paramount in his training as a coach, and he always professed that. Dave Wallace was the pitching coach of the 2004 Red Sox, if you remember.
Yep.
And they had a starting rotation of Pedro Martinez and Derek Lowe and Tim Wakefield and Kurt Schilling and Bronson Arroyo. And every single one of those pitchers in 2004, when the Red Sox won the World Series and broke the curse, they made their start.
Yeah.
And Dave Wallace was the pitching coach there. And we were fortunate to have Dave Wallace with us for a couple of years. And when we did, he focused on the pitcher's health because he knew that's paramount.
Dan, I wanted to ask you, the Orioles have given extensions to Shane Baz as soon as they acquired him, you know, like a month later, it seemed like or 2 months later, they hooked him up with a 5-year deal. Now they've added an extension to Kyle Bradish. If you were in the Oriole position of power and authority, what would Trevor Rogers' contract look like for you? And do you think he is worth an extension?
Well, I mean, Trevor Rogers has been a really good addition to the team. I'd have to take a look at his record, his health record, all those things. You know, it's just so hard with the pitchers to prepay him. You know, it's a very valuable commodity, the pitching, and 60% of them spend time on the disabled list every single year. So, you know, you got to be careful when you're investing in your team on a long-term basis. So I don't know. Trevor Rogers has been good for the Orioles, but I don't know enough about him to know if it would be a good investment for the team.
Dan, this is Byron again. So I'm an injury lawyer and I'm a sponsor of the show, and that's why Stan has me on.
He knows nothing. He knows nothing about baseball.
I know nothing. But I am curious. If you do a long-term deal with a pitcher, are there insurance companies that will provide a policy for the organization? And
how expensive are those?
And if so, is it a fortune?
Do we lose Dan again?
Potentially.
Been trouble. I can tell you that there are insurance companies.
I think Dan just didn't want to answer that question. That's I understand entirely.
Yeah. We're trying them back again?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We're getting a call question by question. We have to call them back. I can tell you that there are insurance companies, but it is expensive.
Right.
You know.
Right. And
but when you're talking about, 120, Rogers is probably now 120 million. If Bradish got 90, Rogers must be 120 to 140, I'm thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
so a couple $1 million there. Dan, you back with us?
Yeah, I'm back with you guys. Right. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Still thundering and raining here in North Carolina.
Soggy lines down in Wilmington, North Carolina. Byron's question was, with pitching contracts, long-term contracts, 5-6 years, are there insurance underwriters that will take that, and how expensive is it?
Well, there was a active insurance market, but given the history of the industry with all the injuries and the teams collected on the pitchers, those contracts are a lot harder to lay off some of the risk to an insurance company. So these days, if you do have a pitcher and he has a previous injury, they can insure the pitcher, but a lot of times they'll exclude the injured area. So if the player had a Tommy John, they might exclude the elbow. So the cost of the insurance and the availability of insurance has been limited given the history of the industry. So it gets tougher and tougher. So a lot of teams are self-insuring, right? When you make the investment, you are investing that money, and then if the player gets hurt, you're not necessarily going to get subsidized by somebody else for that injury.
Okay.
So it's gotten a lot harder given the number of injuries there has been throughout the industry.
I'm used to insurance companies not paying. Maybe I should go fight for MLB teams.
I think that's a great idea. Great idea. Dan,
Well,
is the premium pegged on? In other words, is there a lot difference for the insurance company if Trevor Rogers was going to be on a 3-year contract as opposed to a 6-year contract? And I'm not saying the player would. But.
Yeah, well, it's the risk profile you'd have to take a look at. Like I said, they used to be a lot easier to get, but they're a lot harder to get now. And I'm not sure. Some of the major market clubs have been self-insuring. They haven't been utilizing insurance. They've just been investing the money in their major league payroll.
Dan, Griffin has one question, and I got a real quick one for you before we let you go.
Yeah,
go ahead, Griffin.
Dan, I'm curious, what do you think is a fair analysis of the job that Mike Elias, since you mentioned him earlier, what's the fair analysis of the job that Mike Elias has done to this point? I mean, you mentioned it was a quick way out of the rebuild. It was a miserable rebuild, but they did quickly win 100 games out of that, but now they're back to selling again. How should we feel about Mike Elias?
Well, Mike came in to rebuild the team through the draft, and I think that, he had some players there when he got there, and he had some high draft picks, which he was able to add to the team. And, some of the people that we had there contributed to that. Brad Ciolek and Danny Haas, they were very good guys for the team, and they've contributed to help the Orioles. The job has its ups and downs. I think the biggest disappointment the Oriole fans have is that they went through the rebuild and they expected a period of time like we had from 12 to 16. We had the best record in the league from 2012 to 2016. And I think the Orioles fans' expectation, given the farm system ratings that they got and the players that they had after they made the playoffs. When did we make the playoffs? 23 and 24?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the fans' expectations were that the team was going to be competitive, year in and year out for a stretch of time. And I think that's where fans are disappointed. It's American League East is a tough place to do business, man. All those teams are good, and I sense that the Orioles fans are frustrated because the team hasn't won a playoff game since 2014, since we beat the Pirates. We got knocked out by the Kansas City Royals in the World Series.
Yeah.
And that was a good team, but we had a bunch of injuries. Davis wasn't available, Machado wasn't available, Wieters wasn't available, and we replaced those guys on the run. And during the season, we had Ryan Flaherty started the playoff game at third. We had Steve Pierce starting at first, who had a great year, and then we had Todd Hundley behind the plate. And so we were competing for the pennant, but we didn't have our, top three guys. So, I just think the fans are disappointed. And on a long-term basis, if you don't have a good rotation, I don't know how you and those pitchers are healthy. I don't know how you can compete and win more games than you lose,
Dan,
particularly in the American League East. So, it's a tough place to do business, and things aren't going to go your way all the time.
Dan, before we let you go, about a year ago I had you on, and you gave me a statistic about how many more players are on the IL today than there were like 10 years ago. And you gave me a figure like the number doubled in 10 years. Was that right? Do you
Well,
remember?
the amount of money teams are paying players on the disabled list is over $1 billion a year now.
Unbelievable.
And almost 2 out of every 3 pitchers spend time on the disabled list every year. So
All right.
That's an issue for the industry. But that's something that if you're running a ball club, you got to take into account and do the best you can to have as much depth as you can on your roster.
All right. Dan, appreciate your being with us. One of your favorite writers, Rock Kabatka, is going to join us in just a second.
Oh, good. Say hello to Rock, and hopefully next time I can join you on video. I won't have a thunderstorm down here in North Carolina.
All right. They used to say for me, I used to have a face for radio, but you have a better face. I'll talk to you soon, Dan.
Thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right.